Okay, well, I guess we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum here. Online, participating remotely is Sharon Tatro. Do you want to just acknowledge that?
Hi, I'm here. Sharon Tatro, participating remotely. Hi, everybody.
Hello. We are expecting, I guess, Jeremy, to join us at a later time.
That's just
You. Okay, great. All right, so it's 7 o'clock and we will call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 1825. Warrant Committee meeting. It's also being recorded and will be made available for replay on the website. The agenda today is it shouldn't be a very long, we don't expect to be a very long meeting, but it's to approve our minutes from October and January, to go through sort of quickly review meeting minute assignments, the calendar, talk about our calendar and trying to schedule department reviews. And then talk about, we'll get a presentation from the town finance team on the budget outlook. Are we also going to do revenue walkthrough too? Or is that part of your? Yeah, okay. And then we'll get an update, I guess, on non-routine type of warrant articles. And then any informational items that everybody wants to share. So first agenda item is the minutes. I guess everybody have a chance to read those? Any comments or edits, changes? Okay. Good, a motion to
do them separately or together?
What it's worth, which isn't much, I can't vote on the first minutes because I wasn't here.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do them separately.
Yeah, okay.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 24th as submitted. Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ed? Bob? You abstain?
because I wasn't there.
Abstain. Aye. Sharon? Oh, gee, I see Jeremy has joined us. Jeremy, you, we just entertained a motion to approve the October 24th minutes.
I'm on, and I approve.
Okay.
And I'm gonna abstain just because I wasn't there.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do a motion on the January minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of January 9th as submitted.
Okay. Okay, do you want to go first? Right.
I approve.
Okay, yes,
Aye.
aye. Jeremy?
Aye.
Okay. Sharon, I'm assuming you're gonna abstain. Okay. All right.
Yes,
Second,
correct.
okay. So these. Everybody got the warrant committee meeting minute assignments. The plan is since we don't have a secretary to do these consistently every meeting, we're gonna opt for the alphabetical order method of assigning meeting minutes. Bob volunteered last time to do the January 9th minutes. Sharon, your name follows next, so we've put your name for this meeting. And then Ed, myself, and then Mather. There is a meeting. I stopped assigning that because there's a placeholder for a meeting on March 6th. We may or may not have that. But we'll continue on with the order if we do have it. Okay.
That's
This
fine.
is that okay, Sharon?
Yeah, that's fine. Christine, can we promise we won't lose the recording? Or do I need to type furiously now?
I promise.
Okay.
Okay, so the other thing that we want to chat about is this, the planning calendar, you know, there's two things I wanted to just go over on this. One is sort of the, we have added this meeting as a placeholder on March 6th, because we, depending on our progress of getting through budget line items, we may or may not need that. And then the other thing is I've kind of penciled in, and this is a draft, so I'm looking for feedback. I'm looking for folks to get back to me with your proposed date of when, if you have a department that you're covering, when you might, you know, either have that discussion with the committee. And let me know. This was just based on last year's, you know, schedule. So I understand there's probably, you know, maybe some of you haven't had a chance to meet with department heads. You need to confirm these proposed dates, or let me know if you think it's a different date. You know, so I know last year the library was our first one, so they were
They're always ready to go.
they're always ready to go. They're so you know, we can move these around, but the goal here is again to try to get through most of the almost all of them. We don't have to do 100% by the hearing, the warrant committee hearing. Okay, and so we can have some stragglers to cover at that meeting, but by that the next week is the printed version of the warrant that goes out. So we have to have our final votes on the budget and all the numbers settled down before the warrant goes to print. And then I've also actually added in here some deliberations and discussions on the articles. And it was pointed out to me by one of our former chairs that it's a good idea to do the financial articles first before the warrant gets printed. So we will prioritize those. Any article that deals with finances, we'll make sure we have a full discussion on that and vote on that before the warrant gets printed. If there are articles that are non-financial, we always have the option of saying to be heard in the printed warrant, and we can continue our deliberations into April, you know, before the town meeting. So that's kind of how it's been set up. So, you know, I don't know if I think you had mentioned you wanted to maybe move the public safety up to the 14th.
Yeah, I won't physically be here the 28th.
Okay. So maybe I'll make a note of that. Jeremy, maybe you could switch with
Sure.
whatever date works best for you, but we could switch DPW with public safety.
I'm opening up Valentine's Day for you, Jeremy, so.
Nice. Yeah, that's fine if you want to swap those out. I could accommodate, I think, either of those dates. So
Okay.
whatever
Okay,
works.
great. And then the big one, the school department, we have to I forgot to confirm that with them, but we'll.
Yeah,
It's
it's good to have it at the end because we won't even get to look at it until he does the hearing on the 28th with the school committee.
Yeah,
After that is when we get the
the
details.
detail to kind of dive. Yeah. Yeah,
So, yeah. We'll need that time.
okay. So, and then, you know, so, you know, if you have some non-departmental budgets, there's always a chance to sprinkle those in between meetings. We can we have the finance team here pretty much every meeting, so they can cover those. So we can always add those in. Any questions on this or any comments? Just let me know so I can update this. Like once you kind of have a good idea, you've reached out to your department head and
So
we have a plan.
Christine, your calendar said that the 15th you get out department reports. Are those done?
Those are the annual reports.
Okay,
Those are not budget related. Those are the town reports.
okay. But have you got those? Are those available to, for,
The annual reports are not yet. No.
Okay.
No. No, they get compiled in the book that we issue at town meeting.
That's the one that wasn't done last year, right?
Yep,
Okay,
or the year before.
at town meeting,
Yes,
yeah,
we're on.
are we gonna have it this year? Or- Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Said that super confidently.
but,
How's the Red Sox gonna do?
but the departments are ready for,
All their budgets are in.
Yeah.
Their budget's separate from their annual report. Their budgets have been entered. They're ready to go.
Good.
Yeah, no, that's all set.
Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, I guess we're on to the next agenda item, unless there's any, I don't think there's any more discussion on that, so,
No, I should know a little bit more on these once I have a chance to kind of.
okay,
Yeah, we'll meet for a few minutes then.
okay,
get you an idea of this.
okay, good. All right,
I can answer this. There's a question, feel free to answer in convenient. If you can, when the warrant committee page on the website will be updated, it'd be helpful to see meeting packets. That is actually on my to-do list, and it is my fault that it has not been updated, and I promised you on Friday it would be updated. And then we had a very, very long collective bargaining session today, so I should have it done by the end of the week.
okay. Yeah, that's good. All right. Do you want to go through,
Yeah, so we have just a brief PowerPoint, I
Yeah.
think, just to kind of guide our discussion tonight.
Yeah.
I've asked to,
So you should, hold on, I think I can do that. So I just wanted to give you, I gave a brief update to the selectmen last week, and I want to do the same to the warrant committee. And I thought it'd be helpful to just kind of take a kind of a 30,000-foot view overview of the budget for you. So since you're all residents, you understand that we are a significant residential community, and therefore we have a heavy reliance on our property taxes. We've had, over the past several years, limited growth in state aid, and it's becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of our budget every year. We have limited sources of new revenue identified. We do have a couple of projects that we are working on, including the old landfill on 27 for a solar project. And the planning board has undertaken a couple of pilot projects to look at expansion of different commercial districts. We are also having increased fixed costs, and that is on our health insurance, our property and general liability, and our utility costs. We currently, the school and the town have entered into utility contracts with a vendor, so we have locked in our rates, which have been very favorable to the town. Unfortunately, those contracts expire December 31st, 2023. So that's halfway through this fiscal year 24 budgeting process. So if anybody would like some day trading information, Frank, Michael, and I have been working on becoming utility traders. So we're following the energy markets. So those are some of our increased fixed costs that we have limited flexibility in that. We do, once again, based on our financial policy put in place in 2018, we have a strong free cash balance that's recently been certified. Thank you to Andrew, our town accountant, and his team for getting that in. And we continue to utilize our ARPA funding, which was a 3.7 million from the federal government. So in terms of our revenue outlook for 24, just to kind of, for Brett and for Peter, all of our revenues in the budget are estimated revenues. So we make projections on what we think will come in for state aid, what will come in for local receipts. And you want to be very conservative in doing those projections. Overestimating those projections just to balance the budget could result in mid-year budget cuts, mid-year layoffs, if you don't meet those revenue projections. So this year's budget assumes a 2.5% property tax levy increase. We are assuming a 2.5% increase in state aid. And the issue with state aid for us is that typically the last 8 years, Governor Baker already had his team in place, had his budget going, they already had consensus revenue hearing. This year, the consensus revenue hearing won't happen until January 24th, and Governor Keeley's budget is not expected until March 1st. Obviously, that puts us at a disadvantage because we are working on this budget. It would be very nice to have those projections ahead of time. I know the Mass Municipal Association just sent the new governor and her team a letter requesting that they try to have those at least state aid numbers out to cities and towns sooner than March 1st, to give us a heads up and how we're planning. We do have an increase over local receipts over last year's projections. So the total estimated available new revenue for fiscal year 24 will be 1.1 million. And then I just want to go.
I think you said last week what local, but I'm not remembering.
So local receipts is anything that's generated other than the property taxes. So the motor vehicle excise tax, transfer station stickers, the meals tax, those all fall under the local receipts. And actually, you can go to the next slide. I'll go this pretty quickly, but I think it's really helpful to see this in graph form to show when you're looking at our projected revenue, the amount of money that's projected on the property tax levy versus our other things. So our property tax levy, which you see is the largest part of our pie here, that's the amount raised through our property taxes. Our state aid is the financial distributions from state. It's often formula driven, and that's the chapter 70, the unrestricted government aid that I was just referencing, we anticipate in the governor's budget. Local receipts, we just touched upon, and then we have other available funds. And these are balances used from other sources within the town to offset the budget, such as the pension reserve, capital stabilization, and the ALS revolving fund. And then free cash is the last projected revenue on this. And this is actually not a projection. This was certified by the Department of Revenue. In the town, typically last year we used free cash to fund OPEB. We made a deposit into our general stabilization fund, our capital stabilization fund, and we funded $25,000 towards the open space.
And just to interrupt for a second. So I'm to answer your question more specifically on page 26 of this book.
How that,
This right there, yeah,
That'll give you the full list of
that
everything.
gives you, the detail of local receipts on page 26. This is a great book.
It's a fantastic
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
I should have stated with all of these, there's a lot more deeper information and a lot further information both in that book and
Yeah.
available for us.
And by the way, every department that you're reviewing is covered in this book. So it's a good place to start.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
Very easy then.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good graph to look at to show you exactly where our state aid has gone. Obviously, in fiscal year 2011, the last Great Recession, we took a serious decrease in our state aid, and that did result in a mid-year town meeting to reduce budgets. We had some layoffs, and there were definitely some decreases to budgets that have already been appropriated. Last year, we had held a 1.1% state aid. We did go up to the 3.29. Unfortunately, the additional state aid came in after we had already had town meeting, and obviously any state aid that comes in after the close of our budget does close to free cash. And then this is just something for you to look at. This is just our local receipts projections. So you can see motor vehicle excise tax makes up about 50% of our local receipts on that. But as Steve said, there's a further dive in the book for you on that. And then in terms of the expenditures for fiscal year 24, and this is both looking at the fixed costs, which many of these costs are both school and town benefit costs, as well as I'm only speaking on the expenditure for the town side of the budget this evening, not on the school side. So as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing an increase in our health insurance, our property liability, Our OPEB increases to the 525 for the financial plan this year. And again, we're seeing an increase in our utility costs. In terms of what we're planning for our department request this year, there are a couple of changes that we're proposing, and one is the creation of a human services division. And we are just finalizing the budget proposal on this, but I don't believe that there's going to be a cost increase associated with that. And what we're doing is taking, making the human services division, which would be led by Kathy McDonald, who's currently the department head at Council on Aging. It leaves the day-to-day operations of the individual departments, but puts them underneath this umbrella organization of human services, which will improve efficiency, allow us to more effectively deliver our services, and more coordination of our programs. And Kathy McDonald has actually already started doing this. She has set up monthly department head meetings for those departments that would fall under the human services division. So we've already seen, without the official approval to move forward with this, we've already seen an increased cooperation within those departments. I have two new positions proposed within this budget. One is, we haven't come up with a final title on this. We're still kind of kicking that around a little bit. So right now I'm calling it a facilities energy project manager. As I touched on before, we're following the energy markets, and it's probably more suited towards somebody who is schooled in energy management, sustainability, as well as we've seen a vulnerability in our facilities department this year. And so we're looking to have a project manager to staff that department as well. Also asking for an increase for a conservation agent from a part-time agent to a full-time agent. We have struggled in filling this position for close to a year now, and we've watched all of the other towns around us successfully negotiate a full-time contract with an agent. We have not been able to do that. We also believe that increasing the hours for the conservation agent will allow us to meet the Board of Selectmen's goals, which is to start to do some more land management of our open space areas. And part of that will be developed through the open space and rec plan this year. We still have one collective bargaining agreement outstanding, and that is with police. I am pleased to announce that we made really great progress today. We've reached agreement on some major terms pending an MOU. We still need to draft that, and it obviously would need to be ratified by both the police union and the Board of Selectmen, but I think we are headed towards an agreement for town meeting. Great news.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work by the union and the bargaining team, so. Just a quick update on the fiscal year 24 capital budget. As you know, we created the capital stabilization fund in fiscal year 2022. We deposited, transferred appropriated, I should say, from free cash last year, $2 million into the capital stabilization fund. And we anticipate between the use of the free cash that's been appropriated and our ARPA funding that we will be able to fully fund the fiscal year 24 and the fiscal year 25 capital budget. And actually, we have a meeting tomorrow to hopefully finalize that, Sharon, get started on it, finalize it. Should be able to do it in 1 or 2 meetings, so.
Here's hoping we do the whole thing in one smash.
Well, since we're talking about that, maybe it would be good to educate our new members on. Because I know I was confused with the different names that get thrown around for these stabilization funds.
Mhm.
So distinguishing between the two and the purpose of each might be helpful to.
So we have a capital stabilization fund for our capital projects, and that involves any capital expenditure not building related. And then we have the municipal building stabilization fund, which deals with all of our school and town buildings. And they've both been set up as separate stabilization accounts. The municipal stabilization fund is a dedicated revenue source, and that was the override we did in 2018, $1 million override. So that maintains budget every year and is increased by 2.5% by the Board of Selectmen every year.
So capital is.
Capital is vehicles,
Vehicles and
IT.
IT and.
I think some of we're just reviewing some of the same on the list.
So we shouldn't see see those things coming out of the municipal stabilization.
Correct. Should only be building related municipal.
Right.
And once again, the
It's-
book,
there's a-
start at page 177, it'll give you a very good
Yes, and it'll give you a list of what we've approved over the last few
kind of
years
thing,
as
so
well.
to that point, that's great.
Yeah.
So that none of this, you know, in the past, we've had emergency actions to go into long-term capital leases.
Mhm.
Those should be,
We are.
is that a policy or was that something we needed to do?
We need to do the leases on the police vehicles. We did not have the capital stabilization fund set up yet.
Yeah, it wasn't
And
fun.
that was in our downturn. In fact, in fiscal year 20 or 21, during COVID, we actually stopped the capital stabilization fund and didn't fund any
Yeah.
projects unless they were emergencies. So the leasing of that came out of that.
So the expectation is we won't be doing those.
We should not need to. Yep, especially also with interest rates, it would not be favorable for us to do that anymore. But no, we were actually just reviewing the capital stabilization funds balance, and we feel very positive fiscal year 24 and 25. We should have no issue with funding both of those.
That'll end all the opera money.
Yes, so it's actually probably best for me to make a separate ARPA presentation to you at a later meeting. And in the meantime, what I can do is I will send the ARPA presentation that we made to the Board of Selectmen a couple weeks ago. There is a balance left in our Norfolk County allocation after the projects that were approved by the Selectmen last Tuesday.
I'm sorry, everybody else take a notice. So a computer, is it assigned a useful life? We expect this computer to have a useful life of 4 years or
Yes.
5 years.
Mhm.
And so, and then that buying a new computer comes out of capital stabilization.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we are creating a life cycle analysis for all of the projects back to 2020 in the capital budget.
Well,
It's
that,
not complete yet, but it's.
there is a dollar minimum, right?
5,000.
$5,000, so. So anything under that would be in the operating budget.
Okay.
If it's over that would come out of,
Yeah,
these stabilization funds.
correct.
Yeah.
We try not to do, we do have, like, for example, for IT, we do have an operating budget that does have some replacement. If there's an emergency during the year and we can't wait for the capital. allocation.
Right.
Well, I think in terms of next steps, the school committee budget hearing is January 26th. You're already starting to schedule meetings with town departments. We anticipate hearing something. The Mass Municipal Association annual meeting kicks off on Friday. We're hoping to hear something. You'll all get a text from me if we get some good news. We get a heads up. So we're hoping to hear something shortly on that. And then obviously we're all working towards the warrant hearing on March 20th. At your next meeting, which not next week, but the week after, we should have a budget worksheet, once we have some more of those unknowns a little better handle on. We'll have
So
a
that would
full
be
budget.
the January 31st.
Correct.
But if people reach out to departments, they'll know what their budgets
Their
are.
budget's fine.
And then
yeah.
they'll have the detail to give to them, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
You sound like you've been frenetically busy, so I'm not trying to add to your workload, but you had mentioned that someone was gonna come to a presentation to the selectmen about the tri-county.
Yes, we haven't had a chance to schedule it yet, but I'm anticipating the beginning of February.
Okay.
soon as we know, we'll let you know.
No, I just,
Yeah.
I thought it was coming up in January, and I remembered, God, did I miss an email or something? So-
No, we had originally intended to have it towards the end of January, but they're trying to get to all of the other towns as well, so now we're shooting for the beginning of February.
I would encourage people to look into that school committee budget hearing. I think it's a really useful presentation that, even though detail will come out with it, it's just something to give you a good overview. And if you go on the YouTube Medfield Public Schools, they do the tape of that, so if you can't make it live. But it's a very useful to hear that presentation, see the issues that they're dealing with.
That's really where we are at this point. We're still just trying to refine we've got all of our local revenue projection set. It's just waiting for the state aid and a couple of other things.
Yeah.
I should get some idea about what our insurance costs will be, hopefully this weekend. They usually don't release them until mid-February, but we're hoping that when we run into some people, they'll give us an idea of what we're talking about. So right now, they gave us a range. We'd like to really would like them to narrow that down, so we know what we're talking about before we start. We know we're gonna begin this budget with a delta between our revenues and expenditures, so the sooner we can narrow down exactly what those ranges are, our fixed costs will give a better idea of where we need to make those changes.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a tough cycle, it sounds like, with all these pressures on some of the fixed costs and the collective bargaining agreements that have been negotiated so far. You know, the wage pressure that's coming is gonna, you know, add to, you know, the challenge of getting a balanced budget. So,
You also mentioned health insurance. Do you have estimates of where that's gonna go and how much that's gonna
So
go?
they've given us a range between, I think it was 7 to 9%. So, so in our initial budget worksheet, that we're working on, we're holding at the 9%, as a worst case scenario, and I'll hopefully get a better idea on that. You know, we did have great experience the last couple of years. We had some premium holidays from the health insurance company. So last year was our first full 12-month, post-COVID. And we, you know, they warned us last year, start to anticipate increases across the board. I'm sure even in the private sector, you're seeing increases in health insurance costs, and
yeah,
somebody has to pay for all the COVID tests. So I think that's, you know, it's all starting to come forward for us.
I thought of going in with a group of other towns and get a consortium of 10, 15 towns to.
So we're in the Mass Municipal Insurance, the interlocal insurance, so we're in a group insurance with.
It's negotiated
Yeah.
for all of you.
Yes,
Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I thought it was, okay.
no, we used to be years and years and years ago, we were self-insured on our own. And now we are through
Okay.
mine, yeah.
How many participate in that?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think
A lot.
Yeah,
But every town in that group gets the same rate
no, depends on your experience.
insurance.
are the plans the same for the plan design, the same for all towns?
No.
You kind of,
No,
you
they're-
design your own
They're
plan.
set up by them.
So how does that work then? I mean, you can't, you all have different plans
Mhm.
and it's all based on your individual history. What good is being in the consortium?
There's still a discount based on being in that consortium.
Okay.
Yeah. We have looked at, and I have to give a lot of credit to the Insurance Advisory Committee, who over the last 2 years has made changes to the plan design that save not only themselves some money, but the town some money. And I know that they are meeting with representatives from Blue Cross Blue Shield to continue those discussions to try and alleviate some of the pressure on their plan design as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding, that's the key to keeping costs controlled, is making sure that you continue to look at that plan design and that, you know, it's.
Absolutely. A few years ago, we introduced, obviously a high deductible plan. Most private sector has gone to a high deductible plan. We've introduced it as an option. And the discussion has always been post-COVID to have a further discussion of whether or not that becomes our primary plan.
Yeah.
You mentioned the landfill settlement. And only because because you mentioned it, and also that it's an opportunity at some point for revenue. Can you give it, I know there's a lot going on, but where are you in that?
So we have last year, we appropriated money to bring an environmental attorney on to help us work with DEP for the closure. So the landfill was never officially closed. The work was done to cap the landfill, but we never got the official document signed by DEP about 25, 30 years ago, saying that the landfill was completely closed out. We can't do anything with solar or make any changes to that without that official closeout. So we are working with DEP to try and get that finalized. I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm pessimistic when it comes to working with DEP on this, that there will probably be some costs associated with making sure that final closeout is done to DEP standards. So I anticipate that that's going to be an ongoing discussion. But it is a revenue opportunity for us. So we would like to try and move that along as quickly as possible. We had made a decent amount of headway in early 2020 with DEP on getting some movement to get them out here to do some investigating and some inspections. And then obviously COVID hit, and then everything, that project was definitely put on hold at that time.
So is it primarily just the bureaucracy's wheels
And
grinding?
that's part of it. I'm part of that, so I guess I shouldn't say that too loudly. But yeah.
Accusatory, but I mean,
No,
are you
it's-
aware of any? The ticking time bombs out there, is it just,
No, and we still monitor the landfill on a monthly basis. We do the air tests, the water quality tests, and we've never had an issue come up, so I don't anticipate. But I also, we haven't undertaken a project yet where there hasn't been a state agency that required us to do further work, so that's why I'm a little pessimistic on that. So.
Sage advice.
I'd be happy for them to just come out and say it's great and sign it off and move forward. And there's other opportunities we can look into. I know the Medfield Energy Committee is interested in looking at whether or not we do a PPA for that. It's such a large site. Is it something we should own? Are there solar companies who are willing to assist us if there are closeout costs to do those closeout costs as part of leasing the property from us? So there's quite a few opportunities for us to investigate once we actually get some movement.
Yeah, no, that's really the
It's really
reason, just
the-
for my question,
Yeah.
because I know that there is. From conversations, is revenue and expense opportunities in both sides because of the nature of the solar projects.
Right.
One thing I wanted just had on my list to bring to your attention. I know you do this every year, but it would be helpful. I don't know if you can take a first crack at this, like when you give us the budget at the end of the month in terms of our state of compliance with our financial policies. Like what does it look like? Because I think it's always been a goal of this committee to make certain that well, since we signed the financial policies last year, that we stick to those disciplines of maintaining the right reserve levels, the free cash levels, and so it would be helpful just to get a glimpse of where the challenges might lie with the first pass, you know what I mean? Just to see that.
I think part of the challenge on that in the first go around is it's hard to do when you don't have a balanced budget.
Yeah,
We need to get a little closer to that. But there's something that we definitely can give you in terms of.
maybe just balances of, what we're
Absolutely.
starting with for these reserves and stuff like that. We can kind of do the math in our head, I guess. But,
And we just finished, actually just finished it this morning. So we do a projection in the warrant report for the financial policy, and then we're required by the financial policy to have the selectmen confirm and vote that they did adhere to the policy. Once we get confirmation on our free cash numbers, the tax recap's been done, so we have the actual numbers that have come in, and we met the financial policy as projected in the warrant last year. So selectmen will take that up at their next meeting and vote that they're in compliance with fiscal year 23.
Good.
Yeah, which is great news. And that's what's helped us in terms of our healthy free cash balance, is having that 2.5% threshold of keeping free cash on hand has helped us build that up for the following year. So where we were spending all of our free cash prior to this 2016 through 2018, if you spend all of it and don't leave any, you're really in a rough spot to begin the next year. So
yeah.
this has helped us build that up tremendously.
And of course, the discipline that they've arrived at in the last couple of years, at least last year, I know, is that they haven't used free cash to balance the operating budget.
That is correct.
So we would want to continue that, I guess.
Last year was the first year that there was zero.
Yeah.
The year before was 200,000.
Yeah.
I think the year before was 751,000, And the years prior to that were 1 million to 1.8 million used in free cash to balance the budget, so. It's great progress.
right.
So.
What were the turnbacks this past year? Do we have that number?
Well, you had a free, in terms of free cash, or are you
No,
talking
just
about-
the turnbacks from the June 30.
I don't have that off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
they'll
Yeah.
give that to us.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
We'll have the usual free cash memo for you explaining exactly how we
Right,
got to that,
Okay,
to that level.
And for the ignoramus in the room, turnbacks are,
So-
when you make more than budget.
Spend less than you budgeted.
And you spend less,
so
spend less.
EW spends less than was anticipated.
Than their
in the
budget. They turn it back.
so
to
the
the
way,
town.
yeah, so in other words, at the end of fiscal 2022, we look at what the actual numbers were compared to the budget that we approved last May, right? So we
Right.
approved the fiscal 22 budget last May. They compare that to what the actual numbers are. And the differences are what's the turnback is for that fiscal year, and that's ends up being free cash. So, so it's the larger that is, the less precision there was in the budgeting process. Right, so we don't ever want that to be too big, but it's probably to be somewhat conservative. You want to have some element of, conservatism in it, just to. So when you meet with your departments, that's something that we should look at is how accurate were you last year and sort of, projecting what your budget should be and where it came out, and how does that inform the budget for this year?
We've always had, and I commend all the department heads in Medfield on this, because it's not like this in every town, but we don't penalize departments for making turnbacks. And I agree, we don't want to see excessive turnbacks, but we don't ever want to give the feeling that use it or lose it. We would rather you appropriately use it. If there's something that comes up that doesn't allow us to spend it, you're not going to be penalized for turning that back to the town.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is if those numbers get really big, and I don't think they really ever have gotten huge. It basically means you've taxed the residents too much.
Right. So we'd like to avoid that.
How does it work with the state aid? I think you said earlier it came back after we closed it, so it automatically goes to free cash.
Anything that came in above what we had anticipated will close to free cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a threshold that we're trying to keep in free cash?
Yes, we have in the financial policy, we have the 2.5%.
It's 2.5, okay.
2.5%.
So we're gonna look at where we're at percentage wise. So if there is over 2.5, do we just?
Well, one of the conversations we'll have in one of our meetings is how does that free cash get used
Yes.
in the next fiscal 24?
Mhm.
So we generated free cash for last fiscal year,
Mhm,
which includes turnbacks plus what was there to begin with.
mhm.
And then there'll be a discussion that there'll be a proposal on should we use that? And they will bring it.
Mhm.
It'll be more than what's required to meet the 2.5%, so they'll look at uses of that to bring it down to the 2.5%.
Okay, so it's still try to keep it at 2.5.
Yeah.
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 Keeping it
Yeah.
high in there, okay. We're just
Yeah.
curious.
Like,
Yeah,
Let's
you-
get there.
I mean, it's okay to be higher. We don't want to go lower than
Well,
2.5.
for,
Yeah.
yeah.
So last year we
Right.
made,
Increase in tax.
we made a $2 million transfer into capital,
Yeah.
$500,000 for OPEB.
Hmm.
We had a $700,000 deposit into our general stabilization.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
2.5 the floor, because doesn't the state recommend much higher than that in free cash?
I think the
Five or so.
no, I think the DOR is a little over 3. On the
Yeah.
portfolio at 5.
Yeah, I think it's 3 is
I think
the
three was-
DOR.
Yeah.
That's a slightly higher than that, but no,
Okay.
not
Yeah.
significantly.
And I think the intention is that we will get to be higher than the 2.5%. The issue is being able to fund some of these capital projects we haven't been able to fund, our continuing funding of OPEB. So there's still some costs that we need to get a better handle on it.
Right.
And really our goal in putting the additional 7, typically we'd always put in $200,000 into the general stabilization, which is basically our savings account. We increased that the last 2 years to the 700,000 based on the unanticipated higher amount of free cash. We need to build those reserves up after so many years of spending all of our free cash. Our reserves have been
Right.
depleted. And that's what led to ultimately to our layoffs during COVID. We didn't have the stabilization fund balance to be able to, to use that within the
Yeah.
operating budget to keep fitting.
And that's the well-run financially, secure towns have that piggy bank to draw on when there's a
Yeah.
thing like COVID or a recession. So that they don't have to lay off teachers and, employees and then try to hire them back, 2 years later.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
So we want to get to a place where we feel comfortable. With that.
So you said progress on the collective bargaining, which is great.
Yes,
And then, in that progress, that's reflected in some of your projections in terms of,
it is not.
it is not,
is
not the, but, okay, nothing of it.
Well, I'm sorry, what was that?
I have not, so anything that's been discussed for monetary wise. For the collective bargaining agreement has
Oh, right,
not been
yeah.
carried in the operating budget for.
For police.
For 23 or 24, so we're going back to look at that.
Yeah.
Once we get the MOU and get our ratification, we'll start updating.
That's why I said our job's gonna get difficult.
Yeah, first edition, so it's even more than that first delta.
It's
that you
great.
gave us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we going? Is the town going to have to make a payment to members of the police department retroactive to July 1?
Yes,
That's not in, that was not budgeted.
that was not budgeted last year, so we will, there'll be an article at town meeting for that.
Okay.
The other question I had was, I'm surprised when you have the chart there on the change from prior fiscal years on the state aid. What is attributable to the 3.29%?
We had, there was a larger amount of unrestricted government aid that came in after town meeting last year. They had been holding out, the governor had anticipated, in-house, we gave us more money. Basically, there was, if you remember, at the end of last year, there was an argument about the revenue that had come in. A lot of you may have seen, a payment back from the state. The Mass Municipal Association was arguing strongly that some of that money, should have been put into unrestricted government aid, that the governor had not put in.
So
it
that
was
comes,
increased.
that's what the 3.29 is, that is a portion of that is.
Yeah, a small amount of that
Overall.
over and above. Yeah, it's not a large amount of money, but
We shouldn't expect that this year.
no, we are conservatively estimating a 2.5% increase in state aid.
Which is still higher than.
Still high compared to some of these, yeah. I mean, the last time it was that level was, except for last year, was in 2017.
So in the last year, the one of our reps was making an online presentation, and I raised a question on state aid and the equanimity of it, if that's the right word, and she was not at all sympathetic. Is there anything going on in the state, with the state, from the towns that are not getting, amounts that are even reflective of inflation? Is there anything in the background that would give it any prospect for change?
I think it's too early with the new leadership, for me to comment on that. I know Mass Municipal is, lobbying hard for an increase, both in the unrestricted government aid, obviously, and the Chapter 70 student aid. I've had conversations with Michael and Jeff. I know their organizations are lobbying, as well for fully funding that and increasing, the Student Opportunities Act. So I think there's a lot of lobbying going on. It'll be interesting to see, what happens in this first budget.
I mean, my understanding of some of the way some of these formulas work is that it, they look at the wealth effect, I think they call it, where they try to, equalize, the allocations so that a town like Medfield that has high high property values and a above average income per capita it works against us in the.
No, I'm
Right.
familiar
So
with
it's the
that,
formulas that are-
but and I know that those are what the formulas are, but the reality of, having increases below inflation is a negative. It's not
Yeah.
even, I understand the politics, I understand the philosophy, I'm just curious as to how that's kept on, how
Oh.
that,
So they may say we're gonna increase it, but it ends up going to the cities, basically.
yeah, no, that's true, sure.
Yeah, it's becoming a big problem for towns like ours, especially where we don't have a very diverse, tax base, because the less state aid we get, the more we're putting, onto our taxpayers, so. It's hard to do all of that and increase, services or even maintain the same level of service. It becomes a very difficult, what you're gonna move forward with, so a lot of projects, I know I talked last time, there are a lot of projects department heads would like to move forward on, a lot of increase in services that we just aren't able to make that move to do yet.
No, and I understand the realities, I'm just, I guess more my perspective is. I want the residents to know that we're aware of it,
Oh,
and you're
absolutely.
aware of it, and it's being addressed, and. We're coming in with one arm tied behind our back with them, but we're not letting it just sit, which is my question.
Any other questions or comments or things that people wanna talk about on the budget, I guess, or if not, maybe can you give us an update on articles and
So
not
we have-
non-financial ones at
We have
least?
not closed the warrants.
Okay,
They're going to close it next Tuesday.
yeah,
There was an outstanding issue, a conversation that hadn't been had, so they extended that by 2 weeks, so. Nothing's been added since we spoke at the last meeting.
at the selectmen meeting, they talked about some additional articles that might be coming. Are you able to talk further about those or?
No, because it's a
Okay.
citizen's petition that may
Okay.
be coming, and so it's not fair to me to speak on it since I
Okay.
haven't drafted.
Okay,
So we should have something on the 31st.
Absolutely.
any of them cost money or are they non-financial articles?
It appears it would be non-financial, but there is a financial cost to it. It would
Okay.
require some additional reporting and, it
Okay.
would be a significant.
Okay.
Budget expense.
And I guess the last item, agenda item, is just informational items. Anybody want to add anything? I know Bob, you had some
No.
things you wanted to cover, no? Anything anybody want to say or no? Question? Okay, all right. All right, so I guess the next meeting will be on the 31st and please let me know, like in the next week, what, if your department's ready to present then, and we'll get the calendar scheduled. At a minimum, though, we'll count on you to fill in some of
Oh, absolutely.
the gaps, I guess.
I'm hoping Sharon and I'll have a capital budget when we can present.
Oh, great, that's great, that's great.
I'll hold you to that.
All right. Anything else, Bob?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. Okay, roll call, Brent.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Jeremy
Hi.
and Sharon.
Aye.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Aaron, bring chocolate next time.
Good night.
This is already good.
Right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.